So why did the VA drop the ball? I mean, was it just a lack of attention? Was it just the classic bureaucratic issue of once it's handed to them, then no one really takes ownership of it inside the organization? I mean, there are very few issues in the United States that people are in agreement on, and one of them, because of all of the press coverage, is to support the veterans. I mean, the platitudes are always out there. Yeah. And one of the things we want to talk about is how do we get past the platitudes. But why is the VA falling so short on this?
I think a lot of it has to do with culture. I mean, the VA is an example of a system that really hasn't been forced to innovate in 30 years, right? I mean, a wave of veterans hasn't come home since Vietnam. So in 2004, you had, for example, 15% women. So you had VA hospitals that had women's bathrooms. Okay, you have an entire culture that hasn't been updated to take into account traumatic brain injury and the prevalence of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's largely still a paper-based system. I mean, the entire bureaucracy is just caught years behind. And the biggest challenge that Secretary Shinseki has had is to transform that culture. And you've got some deeply entrenched bureaucrats. I think the House and Senate Veterans Affairs Committees have not been aggressive enough in their oversight and in their accountability. But there's an important point here, too. Everyone here needs to know, and it's great that it's an influential audience like Aspen, the government does not have this covered. Okay? A lot of folks think you come home and you get some kind of gold card and you go into the VA and everything's good to go. The VA does not have this covered. And that's part of the problem that I have with the messaging coming out of Washington is kind of, don't worry about it, we got it. And joining forces is a welcome initiative, but it's not a focused call to action. And what we need right now, for example, are qualified mental health care workers. We've got a suicide problem. We don't have enough qualified mental health care workers. General Cressey was leading the Suicide Prevention Task Force at the Pentagon. Every month, he would say, here are the suicide numbers, and here's what I need. That never got out. So really, leaders in Washington have to stand up and say, hey, you really want to support the vets? Step up and become a qualified mental health care worker and come work at the VA, come work at the DOD, get on the front lines of a different fight. So I think we have to appreciate that the VA is a spoke on the wheel. And it's going to have to require, in the short term especially, private citizens, local nonprofits, community groups, veterans groups. It's going to require you all to help. And a friend of mine, Aaron Menken, said recently, if you can't serve over there, serve them. This should be a national call to action. And it is not charity. This is an investment. If you invest in people like Dawn and Zach McDonald in the front row here, who's in the 82nd Airborne, if you invest in these young men and women, they will be a generation of leaders. They will help inspire our economy. They will lead us on national defense and politics and all these other issues in the community level. We see them doing great things in education, in the green space. But we've got to invest now, and we've got to recognize that this is the time. The next couple of years are critical before the country's attention moves on to something else.